We are welcome Marieke van Doorninck, Antonia Garavagnolo, and Iletra Colompi. I hope I haven't made any mistake with with the spelling of your names. So Marieke is the deputy mayor in the city of Amsterdam for sustainability. Antonia, she is in the Italian Center for Research, and she was a coordinator also for the European project CLIC. And Iletra is a senior advisor at Circular Economy and Circle Design. But now I will give you the floor for a brief introduction of yourself, very brief. I'm asking just if you can tell something about yourself, but positioning already in what is your experience with the circular economy? I mean, what is your view and your, as I say, previous experience with the circular economy? So Marieke, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Emanuela and everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me to be here today. It's an important day to have a closer look at the results of the Reflow project, which has been very successful, I think, in Amsterdam, and gave us the possibility to experiment on different issues on the circular economy. My work depends on both urban planning and sustainability, and those two go together very well, as we see that the building industry, or the building is due for a huge amount of CO2 emissions in the world. Only concrete is 77% of emissions. So if we can make the change there to more regenerative ways of building, it's a huge difference. And if we're having a conversation on governance right now, I do think it's very important to link all those different parts of the economy together that produces a lot of CO2 emissions and a lot of pollution. If you can combine them with those with the solutions, it really helps, because you don't have to convince other people. You know, you are with people who already know. I noticed here in the city of Amsterdam that when we launched our circular strategy in 2020, it was just at the beginning of the pandemic. It was really in the early month of COVID-19 hitting our city. And we were wondering whether we should launch something like a circular strategy, because this seems so futile when it comes to fighting, a pandemic, and with people with lots of worries on their mind. But we launched it anyway, because we wanted to also show how we can evaluate our economy and re-evaluate what is important in life. And especially when you're in a crisis, you can re-evaluate, you can have a different look at what is important. And especially the idea of the donut economy with good concern for the social fundaments, foundations, but also concern for the planetary boundaries. We noticed that a lot of people in Amsterdam, but also all over the world, really put hope to that, and saying we have come to a situation where actually this is not an economy that brings us further. It doesn't provide a good social foundation for a large majority in this world, but also we are polluting our own planet, and it's the only one we have. So we notice that if you have a good story behind it and a good future and a good perspective, circular economy is something that appeals to a lot of people and to a lot of businesses. So in a way, in the midst of a pandemic, we launched our strategy, and we found that a lot of businesses and people in Amsterdam were enthusiastic to go with it. And sometimes we also really were able to launch some projects that really had this social elements and these ecological elements at the same time. Let me give you one example before I stop. We started to collect devices like laptops, electronic devices like laptops and iPads that were going to be thrown away by businesses. We had people with a distance to the labor market refurbish them, so we could give them away to people with very low income who had no way of communicating during the pandemic, because they didn't have money for electronic devices. Let's say elderly people who wanted to communicate with their family, etc., etc. So, and also we made sure that there was no electronic waste. So we kind of combined the fact of no electronic waste together with empowering people on the labor market, at the same time making sure that people with low income were not isolated because of the lockdowns. And sometimes difficult situations create a lot of creativity, and I do believe that the circular economy really helps in that.
Thanks a lot, Marieke. I think you already put out very important concepts, and really also congratulations for having had the courage to launch this strategy during the pandemic. And as you say, with these difficulties that in any case, they help you somehow to find out new strategies and innovative solutions. So, as I say, push out for creativity. Okay, now we go for Antonia. Could you please also introduce a bit yourself, your work with the circular economy and your perspective on this?
Thank you very much, Emanuela. I'm very happy to be here today with such great panelists. And I thank very much Christiana for the invitation in this project that we know since some years. It has been very interesting to also work together between different European funded projects. So coming to my background, I'm an architect and researcher in the National Research Council in Italy. And we led this Horizon 2020 project CLIC that was focused on the cultural heritage, adaptive reuse, and which role it can have in the circular transition at urban and territorial level. So this project was highlighting how the reuse of abandoned assets, abandoned urban areas, and particularly the historic urban areas, historic buildings, can really have a role in this transition, as it is an opportunity to readapt and to retrofit the buildings. We are in Europe, and almost every city has historic centers, historic areas. And we have, unfortunately, a lot of areas that are not anymore in use. Can be industrial areas or religious cultural heritage, or many other different types of territories that are half in use, underused, abandoned. And this is identified, at least in the CLIC perspective, as an urban waste. Which can have a role with a new life in our cities, and also bring from the social perspective a new way of collecting the energy of the people, of the communities. As cultural heritage has also symbolic value, has also identity value for the communities, and it can be, in the CLIC experience, it can be leverage, it can be a driver of urban regeneration also from the social perspective, bringing together the people and co-designing also the new uses, new life for these abandoned areas and buildings. So this is the CLIC perspective, what we analyzed, what we were exploring for more than 3 years. And also I can say that this CLIC experience has also led to new projects. Horizon 2020 project, for example, we are running now a new one that is Be Culture, and it is focused also on the role of cultural heritage and circular economy in the cultural tourism sector, which is, let's say, a side aspect, but not very much side, as it is a large part of the GDP in Europe, in many European countries. And also many different researches in the social science, in the architectural sector, economic sector. So another aspect that we were exploring in CLIC is how the circular business models, circular financing can support this transition and can help to make business plans viable also for cultural heritage. So this is in synthesis, let's say, a little bit of what we explored in the last years. And still thank you. So I'm very happy to continue in this panel.
Thank you very much, Antonia, and very good to hear also this perspective, linking cultural heritage, the reuse of buildings with the circular economy. As you say, it's urban waste, and probably it's not something so widespread to consider the urban waste, the whole the material from the building. So I think, thank you very much for this. And so now we go with Iletra. Please, could you also introduce a bit yourself, but also your view on the circular economy in your experience?
Yes. Hi, ciao Emanuela, and hi everyone. Happy to be here and hear also all the different ways to work with cities and circularity. Yes, I'm Iletra. I lead the team of thriving cities at Circle Economy. We're actually an organization based in Amsterdam, and we have been operating already for 10 years, supporting cities, businesses, and nations. We work with these three different type of actors to help them implement circular economy models on the ground. In particular for cities, we have developed and we have already tested with more than 40 cities around the world what we call the circular innovation journey. We have really started also with back in 2015 with the city of Amsterdam, a pioneer. But through this journey, actually, we help the cities understand where they are in terms of their material flow. So we do use data and visualizations to help them make decisions. But at the same time, we work a lot with the design thinking principles and participatory design, bringing together stakeholders to co-create circular visions, circular strategies, and actually land into pilot projects that they will be implemented on the ground and start showcasing this new reality of circular economy. I was very lucky to have worked also with the team of Marieke and developed a circular strategy for the city of Amsterdam, also integrating this holistic thinking of a donut economic model that she mentioned. Really looking at how we can have both synergies in an intelligent management of resources, closing the loop of systems, respecting the planetary boundaries and the impact we have as a city locally, but also globally in other livelihoods in other parts of the world. But also really looking at the social dimensions of circular economy. How can we make the circular transition inclusive? How can we make sure that these new solutions will benefit all and not only those that can afford them? So we are also, as an organization, have developed programs around circular jobs and what kind of skills will be needed to be developed in the labor force. And we support cities also developing vocational programs for reskilling the workers with the new types of activities that will need to take place. And of course, all these, as you understand, are also have inherently the idea of governance, because we are really working with all these different stakeholders on the ground. So I can bring more the practice experience of what has this been for me and for the cities I've worked with, this experience of really marrying and bringing people together to co-create and realize such innovations on the ground. So happy to be here and discuss about all this. Thank you for an invitation.
Thank you very much, Iletra. Happy you're here as well. So we can now go further with the discussion. You already introduced key elements. So I would like to go a little bit more deeper on that. And I would like to ask first to Marieke, but to all of you. You mentioned, Marieke, the Amsterdam strategy you launched during the pandemics. So could you please be more specific also, who are the actors, the key actors that for you were involved in these strategies, and also which were somehow the relations between these actors, the responsibilities, and I mean, can you provide a bit how the collaboration was bring forward? And I will suggest to stay more or less in 3 minutes for this, so that we can then make a quick tour the tab and then come back, of course, to this question.
Yes, I will be brief. And I think all the when the introduction was given by Christina this morning, she mentioned all the target groups for this conference, and I do believe those are the main groups working that we need in a circular economy, but all with their own roles. I really do believe that a government can really set goals and set a direction that also gives back support to all the people within industries or within communities to really take it further. Because if front runners working on in the circular economy always have to fight for every, let's say fight for every step they want to take, because they do something out of the ordinary, they do it a little bit different. So you need a government to support you, whatever you do. But we also know that the government doesn't have all these solutions, because we are very much we're aligned to all kinds of different laws that actually are based on the linear economy. So we also have to really look at how can we try to interpret our laws in a bit of a different way in order for these innovators to be able to do things. So actually, as a government, we used a lot of special laws that we can experiment. And you really need that, because without experiments, without innovation, you don't go there. So you need to support those who are working on innovation. You need to support communities that want to work on different ways, and not only in innovation of techniques, but also innovations of, for example, how the governance is. I can give you one example. One of the things we're doing is groups of people who are trying to build their own houses. As a community, in the idea of community land trusts, where you have more as a community wealth building ways of living together instead of strict differences between a housing company renting the house, the people living in it, and other things. So it's, you have to experiment on that with communities, with businesses, but also with, of course, knowledge institutes that really can help you further with either how can we do this within the law that is here, or what kind of techniques do you need? So I do believe that everybody plays its role. Everybody plays the role they can do best. And you need a government being two things, giving directions in where you want to go. So people actually know that this is not just something that we do for 1 month and then we have something else and we go after we try something else. So this is something that is here to stay, that we really want to focus on and really be doing, and giving space to everybody who wants to implement that and work on that. So that is kind of how we started working. So we defined all the different roles and see what those actors needed in order to fulfill that role to the utmost. At the same time, we also, of course, concluded that there were some things that we as a city government couldn't do. So we also need people who can, and of course, circular economy helps us with that, but also other parties, to also lobby and advocate towards different national laws and European laws. Because I think one of the things that becomes clear after working with circular, let's say circular projects, is that we still live within a linear economy. And we are still doing circular projects within a linear economy. All our taxes, all our systems are still based on a linear economy. So I think the next step is really also looking for advocacy to really make those changes to allow those projects who are now still in some kind of innovative, experimental way to really grow into and mature into, the normal way that they can actually thrive.
Thanks a lot, Marieke. I think this gives already a good overview and somehow touch on the practice of what is happening really in the life of the city. Because otherwise, when we talk about governance, somehow you think that is something that stays in the air, but you were very clear on giving the direction, giving also the roles, and also this idea that something that has to stay. So it's not something that is, so to give also the sign that is important for the citizen. And I will come back on this because I have some questions, but before I would like to hear also from Antonia, in your experience with the Click or with the other projects you managed, who were the key actors and how did you involve them?
Yes, thank you. So I was hearing with much interest what Marieke was saying, because we were also working in Amsterdam actually with the organization Pakhuis het Spatial. They also had the role with the network of stakeholders in highlighting the importance of cultural heritage for the circular city plan. And it was a kind of a success for us to see in the new strategy of Amsterdam that cultural heritage has had a role, has been highlighted also as a way to bring forward the transition. In other cities that were involved in the Click project, we have seen this strong role of the civil society. Let's say organizations such as Pakhuis, but also different other organizations in all the cities involved. We have started a participatory process to develop an action plan for cultural heritage adaptive reuse in the perspective of the circular economy. Of course, there are issues and there are barriers to really realize these plans. Because especially for cultural heritage, which is particular type of building of site, there are barriers due to regulations and not all the actions that you can do in other, let's say, more linear buildings. You can do the same for circularizing the heritage. There is also some issues in waste recovery of the building materials, and let's say a new experimentation phase should be opened, perhaps to allow, as also Marieke was saying, to allow different organizations to act in this transition, as we have also the regulation aspects, let's say, set for another way of thinking, another way of doing, which is the linear way of doing. We addressed a little bit this aspect also. And the role of a civil society, but also of entrepreneurs, can be really key to highlight these barriers and to find together solutions, possible solutions that can be experimented. In particular, in Italy, for example, we have the experiment, let's say, of the pact of collaboration between the civil society, citizens, or different organizations that can propose projects, that can propose actions, even very tiny small actions for reusing abandoned sites, for reusing small places in the city, or even for larger projects. So this is a way of, let's say, disrupting the current regulations and bringing at the first point the subsidiarity principle between the civil society and the institutions, which has had a lot of success in Italy. More than 200 cities are activating this kind of regulations or pacts. And it was a model that we explored a little bit in Click as a governance, circular governance models, model that can really help. And the same we did in other areas, such as in Croatia and Rijeka, or we worked at the regional level in the Västra Jutland region in Sweden. And we have seen everywhere this aspect that the collaboration between different subjects, so different sectors, the institutions, the entrepreneurs, the civil society is really key for finding solutions, for really going to the ground and to see what are the real problems and how we can take a step to overcome them.
Thanks a lot, Antonia. I think very important this also this example on the pact of collaboration, but as you both highlighted this problem of having still a linear thinking and a linear regulatory system. So when we talk about circular, but then we still have some background which is very linear and how to overcome it. And go to Eletra, which is also your experience, also the key actors. You were, you say you are bringing the perspective from the practice point of view, from you're working with the communities. So what is your experience in this regard? Also, you mentioned the donut economy. I would like to know also if there is some specificity applying the concept of donut economy on the ground.
Yes, I was thinking also to talk a little bit about that. The actors, and I have worked with the city of Amsterdam, which is a pioneering city in terms of, I would say, participation, and they have this motto, learning by doing, so they are really opening often the process of design and of strategy making with the different stakeholders. There are different experiences depending also on the culture of policy making and the institutional structures between cities and how easy it is to bring together stakeholders. If I could try to make a bit of a theory from my different experiences, I would see like the necessary changes that need to happen within the institution and the different departments. So for example, for when we were bringing the donut model to the city of Amsterdam, because of its holistic nature, that was bringing all these different both social and environmental dimensions, it was necessary to bring around the same table different departments, which usually in cities, strategies or programs are managed from specific angles. So also circular economy is more usually approached from the let's say the department of waste management, sometimes the sustainability department, but it's not often seen as a theme relevant to the people that are working with the social dimensions, for example, education, health, or even other sides of also the economic department is not necessarily always involved in the development of circular economy strategy. So one of the first, let's say, elements that need to happen, or the first things that we can see happening when we want to implement a more holistic approach like the donut, is to bring these different departments together and start looking at the big picture and understanding the synergies of how this transition, so like the circular economy or the donut economy, are including all different programmatic angles or different strategies, and how they can create one holistic vision. Then the next layer, of course, is how to, once you have the internal organization and structure coming together, how you can bring in the other stakeholders, how you can bring in the businesses, entrepreneurs, the innovators, the champions, the change makers from the ground, but also, of course, the civil society. How can you create this dialogue? In the processes we are putting together, we are asking the city to bring in early on in the co-creation of the strategies, the practitioners and the businesses that are the ones that are going obviously to bring these strategies to life. And there is a fine balance, which is there is not a one recipe that I could give to all cities, but there is a fine balance to see when is the right time to bring them in so that the process still flows, but there is enough buy-in, there is enough integration with the experience from the ground, and validation of the vision that the city brings in from the ones that know what is working in practice. And that's something that is really also very much a learning by doing experience. And when cities can allow this opening, but with a certain, of course, always intention and an end goal. So it's not an endless process of discussions, but they allow this openness to experiment and bring in and create these spaces for co-creation. This is one of the most important elements for the circular economy design, let's say.
Thank you very much, Iletra. So you explain a bit more this concept, how the model was applied, and I think very important that you highlighted that also in the departments. I mean, in the cities, it's different to put together different departments, and it's somehow, I mean, weird that you also have a circular economy. Sometimes the department for economies is not even there, because we know that as well there is much more linear thinking than circular thinking. So I think this is also the added value of projects like Reflow, because circular economy in general is not the same as circular economy in city of a circular city, which brings a different, completely different perspective. And you can go for a second round of questions. I don't know if there are questions from the participants, the public, in case we can take one or two questions. Or you can put in the chat. We can have a second round now very quick, and then we have time if you have for a final question. Okay, so I will ask to Marieke one thing, because you mentioned this strategy, and Iletra was also explaining a bit more how it was working in Amsterdam. What were the main barriers? Because Antonia was mentioning some barriers for the implementation. What were the main difficulties you had? So the negative, the difficult aspects of this experience.
Well, maybe one of the difficulties that we're still looking at is also the mindset of people. You know, we were brought up in a way. Maybe this is like grandma tells you, but I grew up in the times of vagrant tension, and we were told that there is no alternative. So one of the barriers that we have is a lot of people still feel or still see the circular economy like some hobby, something that you can do next to the normal ways of working. So one of the barriers is to really say this is not just some ecological thing. This is really the way forward to have a more just society and a more just economy for the benefit of all. I think Antonia was saying it, or Alexa, I'm not sure, to say it's not only for us here in Amsterdam. It's very much also for people in other parts of the world, because we have been, you know, the West has been colonizing the world for a long time, and we still do, because we still take out a lot of primary resources from other parts of the world, ship them all over the world to get here and make new resources. And we do that to the expense of the health of our planet, but also very much to the health of people in other parts of the world. Look at labor exploitation, look at pollution in those areas. So it's really looking for another way of looking at our economy. And I think for me, that's a barrier to make sure that circular economy is really the way forward and is really something that should replace what we now think is normal. So, and the best way to do it, and it has been said already in this panel, is really to make sure that you have everybody on board in the roles that they play best, so that you can actually make sure that you have strong communities who can actually work on that. And I think that's also interesting. In the circular economy, you need a much broader perspective when it comes to economy than just what we are used to, and say we have public, private, ways of working. So it's the governments together with businesses who are doing things. And now we're looking actually broader, and we're looking at public, private, and communities. It's not individual people most of the times. It's most of the times communities who take on, and as Antonia was saying, the civil society who's taking on a much bigger role than they used to. And I think they're also filling a gap. You know, we have been for a long time dealing with governments and entrepreneurs as the ones who are deciding what to do. And the communities and the public was never really into that. So I think it's also a solution for something like a democracy gap that we have. We have a circularity gap, but we also have a democracy gap in the economy that we're having right now. So I think the fact that it's actually a major change and a really system change that we're doing is sometimes a barrier, but it also can be also sometimes good, because if everybody would understand that we're actually changing the world by introducing the circular economy, everybody would be against it, or a lot of people would be against it. So now we can do it with nice projects that everybody likes, and at the same time changing the world. So it's in a way, it's a barrier, and at the same time, it's also a way to people and also business who are used to the linear economy and still believe in the linear economy to get used to different ways of working and having it introduced with not a revolution, but a step-by-step way of doing. When it comes to two major barriers that we're still seeing in Amsterdam when we're trying to introduce it, I do think it's the tax system that still has high taxes on labor. And it was already said, it needs a lot of labor to have a good circular economy. You need a lot of hands to actually do it. So we need lower taxes on labor and higher taxes on primary resources, so that it actually is more profitable to recycle and to recreate and to reuse instead of getting new resources from other parts of the world to create something completely new over here. So that is something that is really a barrier. The other one, I do think we need some regulations on producers to make sure that there is a producer's responsibility, that actually they make things that can be repaired. I think the right to repair is one of the strongest claims that we have in the circular economy, or the right to be that is recycled. And here I do think we have the public really on our side. We see that so many people are fed up living in some kind of disposable society where you throw everything away. We notice that vintage clothing is really taking the heights. A lot of people like to buy secondhand. So I do think the public is ready for it. So let's make the market ready for it. And I do believe the European Commission has a role to play here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marieke. I think you put a lot of concepts. I think this big shift in the mentality, which is the bigger thing. And very important, this idea of step-by-step change. So that what you are doing with the involvement of communities and let's say with these two main barriers. Antonia, you already mentioned your barriers when in your first intervention. So for you, I will pick up a question from the audience. I see a very long one, but I see one that was on a small and medium-sized city can embark a circular journey, especially in the global south. Since you had cities which were not, you have all small, at least medium-sized city in Click. Would you like to reply to this question?
Yes, thank you for this question. And this is a very interesting point. We had a medium-sized city in Italy, which is a provincial capital in the area. And also we see in our work many different small and medium cities that would like to embrace this challenge of the circular economy and the circular city model. But it is also important to highlight some aspects that were also mentioned about skills, about mindset, and also about cost, I would say, because especially small cities don't have resources to start new projects, to really experiment. And in this sense, it is very important the resources coming from the European Commission, in our experience, that really open a window of experimentation for many different cities that can have this time and space to reflect on the circular strategies that they want to implement. Perhaps one of the challenges related to mindset is also the need in many municipalities, especially the smallest one, who don't have a dedicated department, for example, for the circular transition. And they are really busy with daily life, with daily issues, daily problems, and there are no people really able to take time to develop these strategies. So in this sense, I think that the collaboration between all the parts of the society, as said, the entrepreneurs, the civil society, but also the funding bodies, which could have a role in this sense to fund, to finance some small or medium projects in small cities, can be very important to bring together the resources needed to really embrace this transition.
Thanks a lot, Antonia. Very important is how even small and medium cities can embark on this journey and putting the community, somehow is helping. And this is in line what Marieke was mentioning on communities. And I think also we have another question on communities. So so I will make this question to Iletra. Since you are working exactly on this, can you tell more about which role communities plays in the new public-private community trio? Because you had also this experience with Amsterdam City, so in this strategy.
Yes, I mean, I work directly more with the municipalities. So not only with the communities come as a partner in the strategy developments I do with cities. What I find interesting to witness also, especially now with this new experiment that Amsterdam has embarked on, for example, with the donut economic model, is how important is these movements to happen together. For example, what we witnessed in Amsterdam was, on the one hand, the city picking up and taking the first steps with developing a visionary strategy and bringing this new concept and embracing it and experimenting with it. But also, of course, there were already a lot of innovators and change makers on the ground, community representatives, neighborhood initiatives, that they were already far ahead with bringing the donut in different practices. And they themselves formed a self-organized network called the Amsterdam Donut Coalition to really actually say, we are here to make this vision a reality. And when these two came together, this is when it really propelled. And I mean, this was a momentum that was harnessed in the right way, to see the city picking a new idea, supporting it, something that was already moving on the ground, but then also they supported, on the other hand, the different organizations to form a coalition and then go back to the city and say, we are here. And then it's such an interesting relationship and a very new way to see how these two can go hand in hand. So how the city can still give the freedom and give allow to the, or like support the coalition from the back to bring in their ideas. Then the coalition also to go back and say, we want to also monitor if everything goes well, or but at the same time be here to implement this strategy. So this is an interesting collaboration to see how this can come together. And what I wanted to say is that we need to see both. we need to see both working in parallel and finding ways to work hand in hand. And I think this is a very new form of democracy that it's interesting to experience and explore how it's going to be forming in big cities. Because I guess in the past we had more of such of a small city democracy, all working together, coming from Athens. I can talk about that, but now we need to see how this is more happening in a decentralized format also in big cities.
Thanks a lot, Iletra. And thanks a lot to all the three of you, Iletra, Antonia, and Marieke. Now I'm going to wrap up the question. We are ending this very, very interesting opening session. I think it's very important because it was the opening and you already highlighted very key points and it's difficult to wrap up, but I will just I took some notes, but I think that main aspects you all highlighted is this important in the shift in the mentality. So which will take time, is taking time because of course it's a big change and it's going to happen step by step. The different roles you have with the public, setting the goals with the people and with the private sector, but very important with the communities, especially in these new models you are applying, like the donut economy, but also the examples that Antonia was bringing about the pact of collaboration. So how really you put together the different actors, but also how the different actors are together in the institutions, because you highlighted it's not just because the public is not monolithic. Inside the municipality, you have the different departments and you have to bring also the different departments together. So it's really, you pointed out these different layers. You highlighted the barriers, like the regulatory barriers, for example, or the taxes. And I would like just to close with your final concept about democracy and about just city and just society, which the three of you were highlighting. And I think this is the key points for the future, for the circular cities, but for the cities and for the societies in general. So really our contribution to have a more just society. Thank you very much to all.